We're back for your ears only. I'm Melissa Axelberth.
I'm David Alpern with this quote from the news. It may not be quite appropriate. That was Liu Weimin, a Chinese foreign ministry spokesman, on President Obama's announcement that 2,500 Marines will be deployed to Australia to underscore continuing U.S. interest and influence in Asia. Visiting the region, Obama also found flickers of progress in Myanmar, dispatching Secretary of State Clinton there as Nobel Peace Prize winner Aung San Suu Kyi, recently freed from long detention, said her party would re-enter politics. Now this.
That's a woman! 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 You hate women! What is your problem? What is your problem? You hate women! Where are you getting it? Get off the sidewalk! Get off the sidewalk!
Ousted from its lower Manhattan campgrounds in a nighttime police sweep last week, Occupy Wall Street became a failed effort to blockade Wall Street itself. 200 were arrested. With similar crackdowns and clashes in Denver, Los Angeles, and other Occupy locations, some involved vowed to keep up their protests, while others began looking for other ways to produce the greater fairness they want in the American political and economic system.
Other activists, meanwhile, sought to harness the sympathy generated by the Occupy phenomenon, provide more clear goals and more focused approach. One is Richard Troxell, author of Looking Up at the Bottom Line, a leader of the National Coalition for the Homeless and the Universal Living Wage campaign at universallivingwage.org. Another is Jon Stein, CEO of the investment firm Betterment.com, co-founder of SlashDeclare, a collaborative financial services firms for reform on Wall Street. And they both join us now for Your Ears Only. First to Richard Troxell, welcome to our program.
David Alpern, thank you very much for having me.
How does the formula for your concept of universal living wage differ from the way we figure current minimum wage?
Well, currently, the federal minimum wage created in 1938, basically we pluck a number out of the air. And currently that number plucked out is $7.25, which is a one-size-fits-all concept. Obviously, this is a nation of 1,000 economies. In New York, you certainly know that the cost of living is not the same in New York as it is in Kingston or in Poughkeepsie as it is in Syracuse. What we've done is to take the original concept that somebody working 40 hours in a week should be able to afford basic food, clothing, and shelter, and indexed it to the local cost of housing throughout the United States, so that if somebody works 40 hours in a week, they'd be able to afford basic food, clothing, and shelter, no matter where that work is done throughout the United States.
Who in the 99% would be eligible?
Well, anybody who's working a minimum wage job, which would include garage attendants, retail salespeople, car washers, manicurists, ambulance drivers, restaurant workers, landscape workers, elder care aides, infant caretakers. The list goes on and on.
Does the large stock of foreclosed homes provide a possible supply of rental homes at low prices that could be coordinated with a universal living wage?
Well, it is possible. We're going to put the difference of the federal minimum wage, $7.25, or whatever market forces have pressed it to, maybe $8 and more in some areas, and the universal living wage that we're suggesting, and we're going to put that amount of money in the pockets of the very people that need. They all need the same thing. They need housing. Nobody currently has been constructing housing at that level, but this will be an incredible opportunity to break the logjam of these foreclosed houses that are just sitting there vacant on the market, and all of these people that are now needing housing. Currently, 3.5 million people have fallen out of the workforce and have now become homeless. So this is the perfect opportunity to wed these two concerns together.
I know you have a petition for Congress to adopt the universal living wage. Until that comes around, is it possible to institute a universal living wage on a state or city level?
Not really. This is a federal concern. You know, we already have scattered minimum wage efforts around the country. 10 states have laws that prevent anybody passing a minimum wage above that of the federal government. So this is this makes the only way the business will get on board is if we have a level playing ground. If you can just step across the border and set up business, then there's tremendous room for gouging and an unfairness. But if we have a national standard that creates wages that are relative to the local cost of housing by areas about the size of counties, then you have a uniformity that is fair across the board, and that's what business has told us in response.
Richard Troxell leads the campaign for a universal living wage. Next, for your ears only, we turn to Jon Stein of Betterment.com and the SlashDeclare collaborative of financial firms aiming to reform Wall Street from within. Welcome to our show.
Thanks for having me.
What's the best guess about how many among the 99% Americans below the very top also have some involvement in Wall Street through mutual funds, 401k, pension plans, individual retirement accounts, and the like?
Well, about 50% of Americans have access to a 401k. About 33% are actually using them. So a good estimate of people who invest in any sort of way might be, or have access to Wall Street, might be 33 to 40%.
You have a 3P formula for financial firms to get Wall Street back on track to serve the 99%, or that portion of it which is involved in investment. Produce, protect, and play fair. What do you mean by produce?
So produce is about being productive. It's about doing productive work. And that means making products that customers need. So my background, before I started Betterment.com, which is a better way to invest, I worked in Wall Street. I worked for the big banks. And I saw them doing terrifically unproductive things with their time, looking for ways to find fees. I saw a bank in Ohio that was making 80% of its fees off of overdraft. It's making 80% of its revenue off of overdraft fees. And you might think that's unproductive, and they wouldn't get any accounts, but they were targeting low-income customers. And so they were taking advantage of people. That's not productive work, and that's the kind of thing that we're talking about when we say banks and Wall Street should be productive. And
protect and play fair?
So protect is really about having a fiduciary standard, having to do right by your customers. As an investment advisor, Betterment has a fiduciary standard, and we believe all brokers should. Play fair is about leveling the playing field. So we shouldn't have Wall Street firms allowed to co-locate next to the exchange and trade funds just before retail consumers can and actually take some of the value from those retail customers. There should be a level playing field of access to the markets and to information.
Let's talk about some of the other financial firms in your SlashDeclare collaborative. Perk Street, what's that about?
Perk Street is a way to get a better deal on a bank account and debit card. BillGuard is a way to protect yourself from unseen charges or fraudulent charges on your cards. All of these kind of companies are reinventing what Wall Street should be, like Betterment, and providing customers with a more fair deal.
Jon Stein is CEO of the investment firm Betterment.com and co-founder of SlashDeclare, a collaborative of financial services firms for reform on Wall Street. We also heard from Richard Troxell, author of Looking Up at the Bottom Line, a leader of the National Coalition for the Homeless and the Universal Living Wage campaign at universallivingwage.org.
Quote from the news, "This is what we transferred power for." That was Spain's Prime Minister José Luis Rodríguez Zapatero demanding that the European Central Bank do more to solve the deepening euro crisis. In Italy, meanwhile, newly named Prime Minister Mario Monti promised reform of that economy with focus on fiscal rigor, economic growth, and social fairness.
Next, Victims Beyond Penn State for your ears only.